Greetings, Glitter Gang. Happy Sunday, or whatever day it is where you are when you're watching. It is National Scrapbook Day, International Scrapbook Day, Galactic Scrapbook Day. It is Scrapbook Day Part 2 here on Kathryn Scraps. We just got done adding all of the large pockets to our folio wrapper. And now in the next section of video, in this video, we are going to be working on the square gatefold pockets that go on top of those long pockets. So hopefully I wrote those instructions somewhere. I think that's these, and I need a total of 6 of them. So I need 6 7.5 by 7.5. I need 6 6.5 by 6.5, and I need 6 5.5 by 5.5. So, and you know, I can get the 5.5s and 6.5s out of the same page, thank goodness, but those are meh, meh. And I have 2 5.5s already. Not that it matters, but I do. But whatever. I'm just going to cut new ones anyway. So I need 9 sheets of cardstock to get all of them, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's 9 sheets. Why this little wrapper will not stay in its little thing is very annoying to me. Why are you being such a weasel? All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring my big trimmer over here and cut on camera. Man, I think I was too rambunctious in the pool yesterday because I have some sore muscles. Some sore muscles. Okay. This is a Rototrim M15. The M stands for Master Cut. All right. Did the cats leave my craft text? They did eventually get bored with it. Okay, so I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3 to do the 7.5 by 7.5. I'm going to do that twice. And what I do is I'm actually going to cut 8, turn it and cut 8. Turn it and cut 7.5. Turn it and cut 7.5. And I like to do it like that when I'm cutting a stack, because that way I know that these are 7.5, because I'm cutting off any edges where they might not be perfectly lined up. So I know they're 7.5-inch squares. All right, so then we do that again. 1, 2, 3. Now, you don't have to do that. As you all know, sometimes my attention to detail can be excessive, but that's what I like to do. I wouldn't do that if there was a possibility of getting more than one cut out of this sheet, but there isn't. And when I turn them, I put downward pressure on them so that I know they're staying together. So I have one hand always pushing down on them to keep them in a tight stack. And 1, 2, 3. So now we have 6 of the 7.5-inch squares. All right, then we can move everyone over. Add this to my scrap pile for this album. A lot of cardstock scraps generated by this album because there's a lot of really big pieces that we're using. All right, now with these it's a little bit different because we're dealing with 6.5 and 5.5. So I have to line them up very carefully and cut very carefully at 6.5 because 5.5 will be what's left. So this one I can't do that. All right, so there I have my 3. Oh, I have to do, oh, that's annoying. There's my 3 6.5s, but I just realized I can get all my 5.5s out of this, but I have to cut 3 more 6.5s. So here's 3 6.5 by 5.5. I just need to cut this down to 5.5 by 5.5. All right. So there's 1, 2, 3 5.5 by 5.5s. And then from this, which is 5.5 by 12, I can cut 2 5.5s. I don't need to because I only need 6. So just cutting that stack once gives me the other 3. All right, so I need to cut 3 more 6.5s. Let's just go to the scraps and see if by some miracle I have 3 pieces big enough to cut 6.5-inch pieces out of them. And what does this 6.5-inch piece do? Maybe I'll just piece them together. I think this is the back, so I really can't piece it together because I think this is what cleans up the back. So that's kind of a bummer. Yeah, look how many pieces I have and none of them are big enough. It's just the nature of the beast. Because it is such a, since the pieces are so large. All right, fine, just gonna cut 3 more pieces. Never mind, I thought I was being clever and I wasn't. When has that ever happened on this show before? By the way, I think I've used pretty much 1 pack of paper cardstock at this point. So, and again, it's because of that hidden pocket. I can probably use those scraps later. Hopefully I have some big enough to use as tags. That's one hope. If there's enough, hopefully there's some that are like 4.5 that we can use for all of our tags, because we have quite a number of tags that go in this. So hopefully plenty of them are. I'm gonna make. I can't get these to line up because they're from 2 different packs of paper. So I'm gonna cut to 7 and then cut down to 6.5. Okay, and there's 6. So that's everybody. So let me move this back. Thonk. Whenever you move your rototrim, always carry it by the MDF base. Don't ever carry it by those rails. If you carry it by those rails, you can mess up the alignment. So be sure to be careful. All right. Okay, so the 5.5-inch pieces, let's start there. And they're going to get scored. These are easy. Get scored at 1 inch. Okay. And then flipped over so that the one you just scored is at 4.5, and then scored at 1 inch again. Okay. And just find the grain and score with the grain. And the way you find the grain in a piece of cardstock is, that's the side that's easier to bend. So I'll show you what I mean. So this, see how if I press on this, this is about as far as it goes before I have to really exert pressure on it. But on this one, see how it bends to this right away, and then if I exert pressure, I can bend it almost in half. That means the grain's running in this direction. So that's the side I want to score on. The side that it's easier to bend. And it's really obvious when you're holding a piece of cardstock in your hand. See? So now I know this is the direction. And away we go. It starts at 2 p.m. my time, Eastern USA time. We've been going for an hour. So, okay, so that's the 5x5s. Now the 6.5 inch pieces don't get scored, so skip those. Now it's time to score the 7.5 inch pieces. So you're gonna, on 3 of them, you're gonna score at 1 inch, okay? And then you're gonna turn them and score at 6.5. But on 3 of them, you turn them so that the line you just scored is at the top. Okay, so let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Six and a half, 6.5. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, where I turn them so the line I just scored is at the top, and then I score, okay? On the other 3, I'm gonna turn them so that the line I score, the first line, so 6.5. You can score at 1 or 6.5 on this first one, it doesn't really matter. I think 6.5 is, 6.5 is just a little bit better, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, then turn it so that line's at the bottom and score at 6.5. Okay, and what that does is you get the lines crossing in different corners. Okay, now it doesn't actually matter with these because they're perfect squares, so you could rotate them until the scores go exactly where you want. But just as a thing to note, when you're scoring gatefolded things, you want to score them 2 different directions. If it matters a lot when they're rectangles. When they're rectangles, there's no way to fix it. No way to fix it. But in a square, it's not as big of a deal. But just get in the habit of when you're doing gatefolded things to score them like that. Vicki, if you were here on Thursday, you didn't miss anything that that you didn't already see. So, or if you watched the videos. So all I did so far was make 2 more of that long accordion Z-twist pocket thing. So that was already in the playlist and that was already on Thursday's show. So that all I did was repeat that work. And then all I've done so far with the accordion pockets is cut my pieces. So I'm about to start assembling them. So you haven't missed too much. Okay. I think you're okay. And then if you stay to the end, you'll see all the prizes because I'm going to call all the prizes again at the end. Okay. So if you stay at the end, you'll see all the prizes so you don't have to worry about missing a prize. All right. So I'm going to get my scoreboard back out and a pencil and a ruler. All right. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this in my scoreboard so that I'm looking at what will be the inside. So that's the mountain side of my score. Okay. And then I'm going to score. I'm not going to score. I'm going to draw a line at 6 inches. Okay. At 6 inches. Because I need to draw a line 1.5 inches in from the edge. And the thing is 7.5 inches, so subtract 1.5 inches, you get 6. And this way, I have an easy peasy place to put my the Z thingies. And all of them get scored that way, both sides. At 6 on the unscored edge. So I've got the score lines here and then I'm marking in 1.5 inches here. All right, so And if you did come in late and you're worried about missing, you know, it's a playlist is going to be on YouTube for this, and of course everything's always in the archives. I like this color of cardstock a lot, Donna, and it works really well with the craft colored craft text, which I have struggled to find a pretty good match for because it is so orange. A lot of craft colored paper doesn't really work so well with it. Okay. So now I've got all my pieces. This is pumpkin pie. And from what I can tell, pumpkin pie is either the new name for the shade that used to be called pumpkin, or they got rid of pumpkin and now they only have pumpkin pie. So I don't know if they retired pumpkin and now they have pumpkin pie instead, or if pumpkin pie is a new name for pumpkin, but pumpkin is gone. Pumpkin is no more. But you can find it by going to thepapermillstore.com and searching Silky Pumpkin, and it will still come up just as pumpkin pie. But pumpkin pie is either the new name or it's a new color that has replaced pumpkin. Pumpkin is no more. Or third option, it was never called pumpkin. It was always called pumpkin pie, and I'm just dumb. So that's a possibility. So let's not rule that one out. So, all right. So we're going to fold along all the score lines and burnish. The usual. Fat slab. I don't think that's it, Bev. I think that probably they either renamed a shade, because I think they renamed the shade, because if you search Silky Pumpkin, like 4 listings come up or something. So, but like, anyways, okay. So what we're going to do is, after we fold along all the score lines and burnish, okay, is we're going to do a bunch of taping. And I'm making 6 of these total, so I'm doing all 6 at once. All right, so tape goes here, 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 here. All right. So here, 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 and you can see how they're going to fold together. No tape on this. Just kidding. No tape on these. These are the 6.5-inch squares, so I'm going to just set them to the side for now. And then on the 5.5-inch squares, tape goes in the same place as it went on the long envelope, because this is the same technique. It's just on a smaller, narrower envelope. So Z-fold on these again, and then we're going to make a tape chain, cut them apart, etc. with these 6. And then once we stick everything together, we're going to have 6 pockets that hold 12 5x7 photo mats. Tags, rather. And if we want to do 5x8 tags, we can. Or we can do 4.5 by 6.5, or we can do 4.5 by 7.5. Whatever, because we have 8 inches total to work with, so we have some wiggly room. Wiggle room. All right, so I know it's so busy. All right, now we've got all our pieces done, so I'm gonna do the pockets first. Wait a second. Okay, so the measurements are wrong. I just realized that the measurements are wrong. I will tell you how to correct yours. If you already cut yours, you'll see how to correct it because obviously mine are wrong. Not wrong. They could just be better, I guess. These are the flap pieces, correct. We finished all the divider pockets. With the divider, with the long divided pocket, Donna. So let me tell you what the issue is with these. The issue is that I have a way to make it into a pocket, but not a way. I need an extra flap on it to attach it to the book. Yes? Yes. So all we have to do, no big deal. If you haven't cut yours out, your 7.5 inch pieces, yes, they should be 8.5 inch by 7.5 inch. So what they would do is they would have that extra inch on this side, and you would score at 1 inch and 7.5 inches. And then that would give you a U, and you would use one flap to close the pocket. Wait a second. That doesn't make sense because we need to, this is the one, okay, I got it. This is the one that's messed up. This one's only going to close on 2 sides. It needs a third closure. So already this one needs to be 8.5. Wow. I was just like totally forgot how to make pockets yesterday or something. How did I mess this up? Okay, it's cool. It's cool. I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to use hinges to fix mine, I think. So I have a use for all of my scraps now. But I'm coming to a realization that these are not going to go together the way that I want, which is okay. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let me get them all taped, and then I'll explain where the problem is, how to fix it. So if you haven't cut yours already, and how to fix it if you have. So, oh, this is always how it is. You know, we didn't do a proof of concept on this one yesterday. You know, this is the one that we didn't totally make in the white cardstock. We just like put some stuff together and then made some changes, and we're like, yeah, those changes are right. Just kidding. Just kidding. It was a test to see if you would spot that the changes were not correct. And you all failed. Every single one of you failed. So none of you passed the test. F's for everyone. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. What are we going to do? The teacher also failed. Bubs, I use, you can use Zippo, which is the chemical roncinol. Some people do use roncinol, but you can also, what I use is, this is a paint thinner, and it's VM and P naphtha is what it's called. And this is what I use because this is what Undo is actually made out of. So I pulled the material data sheet for Undo. I found it online, and this is the chemical composition. And roncinol is Zippo lighter fluid. So Zippo lighter fluid is the chemical roncinol. You can also get generic roncinol. I have tested Zippo lighter fluid, and it does work. However, this I prefer because Zippo has a little bit greasier of a vibe, and it seems to take longer to evaporate. This stuff is less greasy and evaporates more quickly. So this is what I recommend over roncinol if you can get this where you live. And this is a paint thinner. So yeah, Zippo lighter fluid Witch's Roncinol has been tested for a number of years. People have been using it like for years and years and years. People who couldn't get undue because they didn't sell it outside the US for a long time. So people in the UK, people in Canada have tested the Roncinol for a long time. I've been using this for a couple years now instead of undue. So like when you see me pull this bottle out, this is not undue. It's this is what's in it. And this cost me $10 for 32 ounces. And I think undue costs about $10 for 4 ounces. So it's a big price difference. But this is what I use. But yeah, Roncinol. All right, while I have the tape out, let's just tape the the 5-inch pieces because these are correct. I got a tiny stalker. Tiny cat. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, hi. How are ya? You gonna come over and say hi to your friends? You gonna come say happy scrapbook day? Or are you just gonna sit on the trimmer and cry? Come here, tiny cat. Come here. Come here, tiny cat. Tiny. Tiny cat. Come on. Come say hi. Come on. Wow. She is committed to ignoring us. All right, flip it over and do the other side. Oh, she's going on her little tower, her little cat tower that she likes. Sorry, everyone, you were not as interesting to Tiny Cat as her cat tower, which should be expected, I think, at this point. Unsurprising, to say the least. Tiny cat. Tiny cat. Meow. I'm not going to... You know what? You're not going to win this time. I'm not going over there. If you want pets, you come over here. All right, so I've got all these pieces. She's like, it's too far. It is too far. Really, if I loved Tiny Cat, I would realize that it's too far and I would go to her. You know, I would understand, but I don't. I don't. So she's now angrily staring at me. She's got her grumpy face on. Her ears are all spiky. Yeah, yeah. She's squinting at me because she's trying to trap me. She's like, I love you though. It's like, you know what, Tiny Cat? It's not gonna work. Your little squinty eyes are not gonna work on me today. I have crafting to do. I gotta fix all my mistakes. All right. So these 5x5 pieces, they're fine. Okay, they can stay as they are. Nothing changes with them. So these are all good. The problems are here with the 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch and the 8.5 inch by 8.5 inch. All right, so here's what we need. We need this piece, the 7.5 inch. All right, let me just cross these all out. So for the flap, we need one at 5.5 by 5.5. That's correct. Okay, that's correct. The 7.5 by 7.5, okay, needs to become 8.5 by 7.5 and get scored into a U. I'm going to do one at 8.5 by 7.5, and you score the 8.5 at score the 8.5 inch edge 1 and 7.5. Okay, so there'll be a score line here and an extra flap, and then we score the 7-inch edge at 6.5, and then that keeps that score line the same. So that will give this 3 flaps. All right, so that when we stick it to this 6.5 inch piece, it has a closure here. Now, the difference being that the 6.5 inch piece is no longer 6.5 inches because it needs an extra flap so that it can get stuck to the long pocket. So it becomes 7.5 by 6.5. Okay. And we score on the 7-inch line, 7.5 inch at 6.5 inches. So it forms a 6.5 by 6.5 inch piece. Okay, so what that means is this one would have, have an extra score and an extra inch. So when this has its 3 sides, those 3 sides get stuck to the 6.5 inch part. That forms our pocket. The 5.5 inch piece goes inside of it to make to split the pocket into the 2 pieces. Okay, and then this extra flap on the 6.5 inch piece, that will be how it gets stuck to the book, and we'll stick one on one side and one on the other. Okay, so here you go. Take a picture, take a screenshot, pause and write it down, the new measurements. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make 2-inch pieces scored down the middle at 1 inch to add a flap wherever I need a flap. Okay, so that's how I'm going to correct it. If you already followed these instructions up here and you're like, how do these even go together, then that's also what you'll need to do. So I'm going to make 12 2-inch by 6.5 inch pieces is how we fix this. 12 2-inch by 6.5 inch pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to work on that. So that's how we correct it. All right, no big deal. It's easier to make things bigger than to make things smaller. Wait, that's not true. It's probably easier to make things smaller because then you can just cut pieces off of them. But it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine. Whatever. All right. All right, so we need the first... Alrighty. So these are 8, I think. Yep. So those are plenty big. We'll start there and we'll see if we have enough. We probably have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we need 12, and these are 4 inches, so that's plenty. Alrighty. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3. I'm going to cut these down to 6.5 inches, and then we'll add the tape. All right. And since they're 4 inches, I can score them at 1 and 3. And then score them in half, or cut them in half rather. Down the length at 2 inches, and then that'll divide them into 2-inch pieces, and then I just have to tape, tape, tape. All right. Okay. Okay, so now we just have to fold along all these score lines and burnish. And then we will add tape and once I've added these flaps, it'll be easy for you to see how the final pieces will look once they are the appropriate size. So what we've learned is very few things are not fixable. Okay. So I'm gonna start taping, making a tape bracelet. And making a tape chain. And when I do this, I always line up the score lines more than I worry about the edges, because that way I get my tape exactly where I want it on the score line. That's the most important thing. Just double work, exactly. Just more work. All right, so once that's down, my second line of tape goes by the edge. And these are the ones that we'll use. They get the two different ones get the, or 6 of them get taped one way and 6 of them get taped a different way. So these are going to get taped on the same side on opposite sides of the score. So I'm going to flip it around like this and then run the tape so that the tape's on both of the sides. These are the ones we'll use to turn the pockets into pockets. The other ones, this only matters to you if you've already cut your pieces out, so you have to correct like I do. But the other pieces we'll do one on one side and one on the other side, because those are getting attached to the back of one piece and the front of another piece, so the tape needs to be on. Wait, no, it doesn't. They can all get taped the same way. I just am dumb. Once again, apparently I can't do 2 shows in one, or 4 shows in 1 week, or whatever, however many shows. One too many shows. Yeah, this was just a planned teachable moment. You know, it was a test to see if you would all, if you all could catch the mistake, and then if you didn't, we were just going to have a teachable moment. So, you know, it's a win-win, right? It's a win-win. All right, here we go. Almost there. Just too many notes. It was just too many notes. Although I don't like the implication that I was Salieri in this scenario. So and all we have to do now that they're taped is we're going to burnish, cut them apart. You know the drill. You know the drill. By the way, anytime Amadeus gets mentioned on the show, which is a lot actually, I always recommend that you find the podcast Cinephiles, 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 which is a podcast where I think it's a director and a scriptwriter who work in Hollywood, discuss classic films. And I think that their episode on Amadeus is particularly good, and I highly recommend it. If you have any interest in Amadeus at all, you check that out, because I do think they do a really excellent job with the Amadeus episode. Okay. All right. So now I can cut them apart now that they've been taped and burnished. Salieri did think he was a true genius. Honestly, Salieri was a genius. I mean, really the problem is, you know, that, I mean, he was a genius. He was, but when he allowed Mozart's gift being greater than his to diminish his own, rather than, like, he could have had a happy life if he could have recognized, you know, that that Mozart's gift being better than his didn't mean that his gift wasn't totally worthy. And it's actually such a great metaphor for life, honestly. It's such a great metaphor for life. Because it's not just that Salieri thought he was a genius and he wasn't a good composer. He was a good composer. He was a genius composer, but he was not on the level of Mozart. Almost no one who has lived has been on the level with Mozart. The only person alive at the same time as Mozart who was arguably as good at music as Mozart was Mozart's sister. Like, if you want to talk about tragedies, people, when girls, when they were still children, it was okay for them to perform music publicly, like socially okay as in socially acceptable. And so people who saw Mozart and his sister perform together when they were both children, a lot of people came away thinking that she was more talented, but because of the patriarchy and sexism and all the rest, she's unknown. But there was someone at the time Mozart was alive who was just as good, if not better, at music than he was, and it was his sister. I think you all have shown incredibly good judgment by just being here, right? You're clearly making good life choices, and you clearly have excellent, excellent taste. Okay. All right. So these pieces are going to get attached. One of them will get attached to each of these. And this is how they'll get stuck in the book. Okay. And I'm just going to put this right on the edge. And then if it pokes out a little bit, I'll trim it off with my scissors. I know, we're philosophy-crafting again, and I really hate philosophy, but here we are. Here we are. Maybe I don't hate it as much as I think I hate it. I mean, look, once you've read The Consolation of Philosophy, it's just, that does something to your appreciation of the entire field of study. The philosopher-crafter strikes again. All right, so we're going to add all these little pieces. Despite this setback, I think we're making really good progress. Worst case scenario, we will be done with construction at the end of today. That's like worst case scenario. So but yeah, you just, if you can not let other people's gifts diminish your own, then you will be very happy. That it will improve your happiness immensely. That's why Teddy Roosevelt said comparison is the thief of joy, because you can be joyful with your own talents and your own skills, but as soon as you compare yourself to other people, rightly or wrongly, because you may be wrong if you think someone is more talented than you are. We are making 6 flaps, yes. You may be wrong. So you could be stealing your joy because, and it could be not even factual, not even true. All right. Yeah, it's getting harder to not make these comparisons, but just because social media, I think, makes it more difficult because you have so much more to compare. Before, you had your people around you, neighbors, friends, family. Now you have the entire world to compare yourself with. But just remember that, again, you may not be seeing a true picture of yourself, and you may not be seeing a true picture of someone else's life. You see what they want you to see. Okay, so don't let anyone steal your joy. Don't. All right, so this is the piece that is now 7.5 by 6.5. Okay, so this is this one, 7.5 by 6.5. So you can see how it's 7.5 by 6.5 now that I've added this flap to it. All right, it's all good. Okay, so now we just have to, so we've got those 7.5 by 7.5. I've got the 5.5 by 5.5. These are the same. Okay, now we just need to make these the 8.5s by 7.5s. And we will do that by adding a flap here. And I'm going to, remember, I'm going to put it opposite that piece. I'm going to pop it up, you know, like an 8. I'm going to come up like a 1/16 of an inch off the score line. I'm not putting it flush with the score line. And then I'll just trim it off the top because I don't want it to make it hard to fold. Did I major in math? No. I studied history and political science, but I also took some philosophy and some literature, you know, the usual liberal arts stuff. My math in college, though, was a horrific nightmare type of geometry known as Euclidean geometry. So, my math concentration in college is I took Euclidean geometry and I studied it for an entire year. And the way to describe Euclidean geometry is, in high school geometry, you know, when you learn something like the Pythagorean Theorem, which is, you learn it as a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? And the thing is that there's a reason why that always works. There's a proof, a mathematical proof for why that always works. And these geometrical proofs were compiled by a guy named Euclid, including the Pythagorean Theorem. And when you take Euclidean geometry, you almost like think of it as like the root of geometry, the philosophy of geometry, or the theory of geometry. So you don't take for granted in Euclidean geometry that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You have to prove why in every single triangle a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And the proof for the Pythagorean theorem is something like 15 pages long in a textbook of, if you know it, because we know a, and we know b, then we know c. because we know C and we know D and we know E, then we know F. And then there's 15 pages of that. And then when you get to the end, it's like, oh yeah, the Pythagorean theorem. So like, just to give an example of how important the Pythagorean theorem was when it was finally proven, when Pythagoras finally was able to prove that the a squared plus b squared equals c squared, he sacrificed 200 bulls to Zeus. Just think about how much money that was. Okay, first of all, geometry was a very lucrative gig, clearly. But like, hey kitty. But yeah, just to give an idea of, of how big of a deal the Pythagorean theorem was at the time. He sacrificed 200 bulls to Zeus. So we learned the Pythagorean theorem and a whole bunch of other stupid crap like that, which is so unimportant because I could not even tell you why a squared plus b squared always equals c squared, but I know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's all I need to know. In summary, math is stupid. Just kidding. Just kidding. But geometry is my favorite kind of math. But Euclidean geometry is hell. So, anyways, I don't recommend it. Do not recommend. But I do really, really enjoy geometry, which is why I took Euclidean geometry instead of algebra. I am 132% sure that if I'd taken algebra, I would have been happier. But what can you do? What can you do? I'm putting the flap on the side where I've drawn my line, because that's the side I want to close off. I don't want to close off this side, which is the top. So again, if you followed along with me exactly and you have to add these strips to the side with the line that you drew, because that line is where you place your Z pocket. Donna says her degree is in math and she loves algebra. I've noticed that people tend to fall into one of two groups. They fall into the group where they love geometry and they hate algebra and every other kind of math, or they fall into the group where they love algebra and every other kind of math and they hate geometry. And I just think it's two different types of reasoning in the brain, and that someone who reasons like I do is, you know, a geometry person. I've never met anyone who loves geometry and algebra equally. So. But just to give you an idea of how different Euclidean geometry is from, like, say, algebra, the person who taught me Euclidean geometry was a philosophy professor. So it's more... It's more almost like philosophy. Okay. All right, here we go. Now, I do think that all examples for algebra in textbooks should be replaced with personal finance so that kids know how to compound interest by the time they get out of school. And they know how debt works and things like that, instead of how many apples Oscar has. But that's just me. That's just me. I also think home ec should still be taught in schools. I think the problem with shop, I also think auto shops should still be taught in schools, and I think carpentry shop should still be taught in schools. I think that the problem with those was not that they existed, but they were taught in a gendered way, like with the assumption that boys needed to know how to change oil and girls needed to know how to balance a checkbook and hem a pair of pants. In fact, everyone needs to know how to do both those things. All right, now, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the corners. So once we've got our pockets to become pockets, you know, I'm just going to cut the corners. The way I do that is by putting the intersection of the two lines under the wire of my under the wire of my trimmer, and then I cut straight through that X. So and then that's going to turn them all into pockets. I see so many people on the internet talking about struggling with adulting, and I think that's really part of it. You know, like you used to get taught how to be an adult in high school. Especially now when there are tools that make it very easy to change your own oil. You don't even have to like get under your car and do it. Like they have tools that just suck the oil, the dirty oil right out of your car and things like that. Like for kids to be able to be kept up on technology like that, I think would be very useful. Depending on how old your car is. But anyway. One thing I think should be taught is I think that the auto shop carpentry class, the like home repair class, I think that every year the students should take an old school bus and turn it into a tiny house. And they should learn, they could learn all about plumbing, electricity, whatever, doing that, and then they could auction those off for you know, the band or the art program or whatever needs money. Okay. All right, so here we go. Here we go. So we've got all our pieces now. So I'm just going to kind of show you how they all go together, and then we'll take a break and I'll do some more prizes. So this is how I'm going to assemble one. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. This line here is where this gets attached. Okay. Okay, then onto the back of it. Okay, so now this is the back, and the back will go on it like so. Okay, and so what that is going to do is that's going to do two things. That's going to close it all up and add a flap where we then take this and we stick it right here on top of our piece, so then we have this gatefold on top. Okay, so let me go through all that. This line is 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. All right, so I'm going to peel just the bottom, just like we did before. And I'm going to line it up with the bottom of this, so my flap is on the side. And then I'm going to close it. All right. So once it's all lined up, I'm going to burnish. Then we're going to peel all of our tape. This is just a smaller version of that big 13-inch one. Okay? This is the same concept as a 13-inch one. This is just a smaller version. All right. But it's interesting how... All right. Then all we have to do is we just have to close it and burnish. Okay. All right, and then we just stick this right here, easy peasy. And remember, half of them you're gonna adhere with the flap on the right. So on 3 of them, you want the flap to be on the right. And on 3 of them, you want the flap to be on the left, because 3 of them go on this side, 3 of them go on this side. So then all we do is we just line this up. And burnish, and burnish. And now, okay, now when we look down, we've got 2 pockets to hold 5x7 tags on this swing arm. It's going to swing out of the way, and we're going to have 6 pockets on this big 13-inch one. So on one of these, you have 10, okay? Because you have 6 pockets in the big one, 2 pockets in the one on the right, 2 pockets in the one on the left, 10 tags, okay? 10 tags. The tags will hold 4x6 photos, which means you get 20, minimum 20 4x6 photos and 4x6 cards in just one of these units. There are 3 of these units. So in a book this small, you have minimum 60 photos or tags, or photos or cards on 30 tags. Okay, minimum. Maybe you'll be able to get more tags in depending on how much room you have. But you can get 60 photos in this if you want to, or you can get 30 photos and 30 cards, journaling cards, whatever. So you've got 60 photos on 30 tags. This is a huge amount of photos in here, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do 3 more. Gretchen says, does anyone see the direction this quick and easy project is going? I don't even know why I try to make quick and easy projects. What if well, it's a good thing I try to make quick and easy projects because what if I was like, I'm going to make a complicated hard project? We would have to work on it for like a year, right? And it would weigh 50 pounds and you would need a wheelbarrow to carry it around. So, yeah. This is yet another quick and easy Kathryn Scraps project. Yikes. All right. That's it for this part. If you're watching in the archives, the next part will be the next set of prizes. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining me. Check out the next video in this playlist to see what's left in this project. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.